let's go across the entire country and let's talk about what we're hearing out of camps, the latest whispers, the latest intel. I am so happy that we get to work for 24/7 Sports, where if we have questions about Miami or Georgia or Oklahoma State, we can just reach out to our network of team insiders. Got one at every major program. It's beautiful. It greatly alleviates the task and burden on our shoulders because we can just lean on them. So let's start, and let's talk about scrimmages. A couple of them happened this weekend. Alabama had a scrimmage this weekend. The outside linebacker situation is really by the day growing more and more intriguing for Alabama. When we were talking on National Signing Day, some of the big names, Drew Sanders, 5-star linebacker, commits to Alabama. Will Anderson rocketed up into the final, I think, top 10 of the 24/7 Sports player rankings. He was a headliner. Signs and commits with Alabama. And so a lot of folks wondered, not if, but when. Like, how long is it going to take for them to get on the field? Well, looks like it could be sooner rather than later. Now, Ben Davis and Chris Allen, if you follow recruiting, you remember those names too. Those are former high 4- and 5-star types as well. Those are veteran guys now for Alabama. And Nick Saban, you can tell when you listen to him. You can tell when you listen to Pete Golding, the defensive coordinator there. When they talk about those guys, they trust them. From the neck up, like physically, they possess all the intangibles and the tangibles that it takes to play at that level. They trust them mentally. They trust them to make good decisions. They are solid, good, dependable players. But then when you listen to him talk about Drew Sanders and you listen to him talk about Will Anderson, it's like they're talking about brand new sports cars. And maybe we don't have them quite tuned to the degree that we want just yet, but we cannot keep them off the field. They're too good. They are surefire 3-and-out types, and they're going to be on the field. Now, the question for Alabama becomes, how soon? Could you see them against Missouri in week 1? I'll be honest with you. I expect we will, and I'm not talking about in garbage time. I do think it'll be more of a situational thing, but listen, think about the different kind of quarterbacks Alabama plays this year. You play a guy like Plumlee at Ole Miss. Who knows who Georgia throws at you? We're going to talk about that in just a second. But you play different types of offenses in this conference, and so you need different types of personnel. So if nothing else, they have the luxury of much more depth at the linebacker spot this year, and they have versatility at the linebacker spot and some extremely talented true freshmen. They're like 3 or 4 more edge types that we didn't even mention there. But Drew Sanders and Will Anderson drawing rave reviews, and that pass rush probably going to be ratcheted up a notch because of that. Let's go down to Miami. Miami is about to fix, in my estimation, what was a glaring problem on this team last year. They were horrific running the football. Miami fans know this. If you don't, by any metric, I just picked rush yards per game, but you can pick any advanced rushing metric you want to. They were 120th in America at the FBS level last year running football. Horrible, inexcusable, should never happen. So I expect a massive leap, and not just because less teams are playing this year. I expect an absolutely massive quantum leap forward in production this year from Miami's run game. De'Aaron King, of course, has the run threat at quarterback, and they've been really impressed with him throwing the ball, but he also possesses a true dual threat. Cameron Harris is a very solid number 1 running back from them. But when you listen to folks inside and close to Miami talk, they want to talk about Jalen Kingston, or Knighton rather, and they want to talk about Don Chaney Jr. And those are 2 young, up-and-coming running backs, extremely explosive. They bring the element that Rhett Lashley and Manny Diaz will want to that run game, and they will be, I think, at least 3 deep in guys that they trust to play winning football for them at the running back spot this year. And if you look at Rhett Lashley's track record, I was reading some of the work from the guys over at InsideTheU.com. You know, they talked about, and they kind of chronicled Rhett Lashley, who is the new offensive coordinator from Miami, and wherever he's gone, here's what production in the run game has done. Guy's got a track record. And so you couple that with absolute bona fide potential, at least on your depth chart, I think it's pretty reasonable to expect Miami's going to be able to run the ball a whole lot better this year. And here's the added luxury of making that prediction. Couldn't get any worse. It can only get better. Let's go to Georgia. The Georgia offense, pretty much everyone's talking about this. Georgia is a national championship contender, and yet there are even from insiders, much less outsiders, there are a lot of questions about this offense. Now, here's the thing first and foremost to know from their scrimmage yesterday. Jamie Newman was indeed running first string at quarterback, and we expect him, barring something drastic, to be the starting quarterback when they open the season against Arkansas. We have never wavered on that, even when the JT Daniels announcement was made. Daniels is a solid player. I just think Jamie Newman is probably their guy, and that's gone unchanged. So let's get that out of the way. Now, as for the intel from their scrimmage yesterday, Jake Rowe over on Dogs 24/7 had a really good write-up, but I took one sentence away because this is what I was looking for. Jake Rowe over on dogs247.com. Run blocking was significantly ahead of pass protection with the first-string offensive line and the second-string offensive line. Is that shocking? Absolutely not. But keep in mind what the expectation in the minds of some people here is regarding Georgia. Some, not all, I'm not even going to say a majority, but there are a lot of people out there, some Georgia fans and some college football fans, who expect this offense to look radically different this year. We don't and have never believed on this show that's necessarily the case. There certainly will be things that are different, but a lot of people expect it to go from, a game of bowling to a game of pinball, and I just don't think when the common eye turns on a Georgia game that you're going to look and immediately say, oh, there are the changes. Look at that, night and day different. James Coley, what? Where is he? That's a distant memory now. Look at all these different formations. Look at these different motions. Look at how much more we're throwing the ball. I don't think that is reasonable at this point to expect. Now, I think there will be changes, but they'll be far more nuanced. They'll be far more tied into maybe varying personnel packages, different route combos and concepts, things that if you know what you're looking at, you'll see. But I certainly don't believe that overnight, we're going from what Georgia did to what Oklahoma State does on a year in, year out basis. Nor do they need to. That's the part B. Okay, so everyone who is longing for this total overhaul offensively in Athens, GA, this dude, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, Colin is showing you Georgia head coach Kirby Smart. It has been our thinking all along and continues to be that guy knows he's got one of the best defenses, if not the best, in the country entering 2020, or really any season, to be honest with you. 2020 is no different. He made some changes at OC. He made some offensive adjustments. You take spring from him. His comfort zone is playing the way they played last year. That's his comfort zone. So it's going to take a lot of certainty to get him to venture out of his comfort zone. And certainty and comfortability is not what you have right now. And for a risk-averse guy like Kirby Smart, I don't exactly know that me listening to Jake Rowe say, hey, pass pro's well behind run blocking right now. I assume Kirby Smart saw the same thing from a much better vantage point yesterday. I don't necessarily know that they walked into the coach's office this morning and said, you know what? I'm sold. Let's hit that button. Let's totally overhaul this offense. I just don't think that is reasonable to expect at this point. And listen, if these changes are made, if these obvious changes are made, they will be made progressively, incrementally. It won't certainly be something where week one in Arkansas, your jaw is on the ground watching Georgia's offense and the way that they're methodically going up and down the field. So that's what's happening at Georgia right now, and that's something really, really important to keep an eye on. This is not some team that's expected to hover at or just above 500. This is an SEC and national championship contender, and the way that offensive line shakes out and the way this offense shakes out, period, that's going to go a long way, in fact, pretty much the entire way, in deciding how legitimate they are in that aspect. Now, we've been talking about Texas some, and I've talked about defensive, especially defensive depth on their defensive line, pretty much wherever you want to look. But, man, we have not talked a whole lot about their offense. And there's certainly experience and talent coming back at quarterback with Sam Ehlinger. But, I was listening to Tom Herman the other day, and I think they had a scrimmage this weekend, too, that we were getting some intel from. But I was listening to Tom Herman the other day, and, you got a new offensive coordinator in there in Yurcich. So you have the usual questions, kind of like they're asking with Georgia. Are we going to throw the ball more? What's our run-pass balance going to be? I don't believe that balance is found strictly in statistics. If the defense believes you're capable of running it or throwing it on virtually any down and distance, you're balanced. That's balance. So you can define balance however you want to. You ask that question every time you have an offensive coordinator change. So, you listen in the offseason, and the people I listened to said the same thing with Texas that they said about a number of programs, and that was they have taken a nice, long, healthy look in the offseason at what LSU just did for understandable reasons. LSU just kind of rewrote the college football record book, so everyone wants to kind of siphon off what LSU did last year. But here's particularly what to look for with Texas, and now we tie it back to what's been happening in these scrimmages in Austin. They are not what LSU was at the quarterback position last year. Ehlinger is a multi-year starter, and he has a specific skill set. He's not the passer that Joe Burrow was, but what he gives up there, maybe he makes up for a little bit more with his toughness, with his running ability. You can incorporate different run elements with a guy like him that maybe you couldn't with Joe Burrow. Their running backs are very good. They got three that they think they can win with right now, and we've talked about Rashawn Johnson and the other two, and we've talked about them plenty. But I was listening to Tom Herman talk the other day, and this is what kind of caught my ear when you tie it into what you know they've been focused on in the offseason. Versatility is the name of the game. That's what allowed LSU to do what they did last year. Talent and versatility and being able to pretty much throw whatever you want to from a personnel and pre-snap look at a defense and never have to substitute. You got to have really versatile pieces at running back and at tight end specifically to do that. And so with that in mind, Tom Herman stepped to the podium the other day and says, you know what I really like about our tight ends? They can play fullback, they can play tight end, they can play slot receiver. Combining that with what we know they have in the versatility department at running back, that would excite me if I was a Texas fan. Knowing that it doesn't look like we're giving up 40 points per game defensively this year. It looks like we're really good there. So we don't have to hang 50 to try and win a game. Even in the Big 12, we're not going to have to this year. And, you know, for that matter, I think there's a little bit of a defensive overhaul happening in Austin and Norman. Just something to tuck away for future Big 12 reference. But depth is great. Depth is a wonderful thing to have. But in today's college football, if you want to win national championships, you better have versatility along with that depth. Because if you got 17 dudes at running back who were all former 5-stars, but they have the exact same skill set, and it doesn't really translate to being a good receiver out of the backfield, I'm not so sure you're going where you think you're going, regardless of how much talent you have on that roster. Give me some versatility. I think Texas has about as good a versatile group of offensive players this year as they've had in quite a while. So there is definite reason to be excited about Texas.